The first thing I noticed was my grandson's road hockey net lying on its side at the bottom of the driveway, and a tennis ball rolling slowly down the slope of the asphalt until it bumped against the toe of my boot. I stood there holding a pumpkin pie from the farm stand on Highway 6, and something in my chest pulled tight. I couldn't have told you why. Not yet. I picked up the ball, set the net back on its feet, and walked up to my son's front door in Burlington. It was the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend, second week of October, and the whole street smelled like somebody's turkey and wet maple leaves. My daughter-in-law answered the door. She had that look she gets when I show up, polite and tired at the same time. Like I'm a delivery she forgot she ordered. "Oh, you're early. You said 4. It's 4. "Right." She didn't move for a second. "We're still getting things ready. Cole's in the shower. Dad's here already." Dad. Her dad. My son's father-in-law, Lyle Vandermeer, up from Oakville in his Range Rover, which I could see sitting in the driveway, black and enormous, parked at an angle so it took up the space where my grandson usually plays. I'd met the man maybe 4 times in the 6 years since my son married his daughter. 4 times was plenty. The first time was at the wedding, at a golf club in Ancaster, where he found out what I did for a living, or what he thought I did, and said loud enough for the head table to hear, "Shipping and receiving for the government, eh? Well, somebody's got to count the boxes." Then he laughed and clapped my son on the shoulder like they were old buddies, and my son smiled, that smile he does, the one where his eyes go somewhere else, and changed the subject. "That's my boy. He's an accountant at a mid-size firm in Hamilton, good at his job, good to his wife, gentle with his son. And he has never once in his life stood up from a table and told a man to watch his mouth. I used to think I'd raised him wrong. Took me years to understand I'd just raised him different." "Where's Jonah?" I asked. "My grandson, 7 years old. Upstairs." I found him sitting on his bed with a tablet, still in his leaf shirt, and when he saw me his whole face opened up. "Grandpa, hey bud, your net was tipped over out there." Ball was making a run for the storm drain. He looked down at the blanket. Grandpa Lyle put it away. He said the driveway's not a rink and I was gonna dent his truck. He picked at a thread. He said hockey's a waste of money unless I'm serious about it. He said when he was my age he was already working, making real money, not chasing a ball around like a, he stopped, like a puppy. I sat down next to him. 7 years old. The man had been in the house 2 days, and I was already hearing his voice coming out of my grandson's mouth. "You know what I was doing when I was your age?" I said. "What?" "Playing road hockey in Hamilton until the streetlights came on, and my mother had to send my sister to drag me in. And I turned out okay, mostly." He laughed a little. "Grandpa Lyle doesn't know everything, bud. You're 7. Your whole job right now is to play." That's what Dad said. But then Grandpa Lyle got mad and said Dad was raising me soft. Before I could answer that, my daughter-in-law called up the stairs that dinner was ready. The dining room looked like a magazine. Cloth napkins, candles, a runner down the middle of the table, dishes I'd never seen before, and there was Lyle, sitting at the head of my son's table like he'd paid the mortgage himself, 66 years old, big through the chest, wearing a quarter zip with a golf club crest on it, and a watch worth more than my truck. My son came down with his hair still wet, wearing a collared shirt I'd bet money his wife handed him 10 minutes earlier. Jonah slid into the chair beside me. "Emmett," Lyle said. He didn't stand. He didn't put out his hand. "Wasn't sure you'd make it. My son invited me for Thanksgiving, so I came for Thanksgiving." "Well, good. Good that you feel included." He smiled without meaning anything by it. "How's retirement treating you? Must be something, eh? No more punching in. What was it again? Warehouse work? Logistics?" He asked me that every single time. Not because he forgot. Because he liked hearing the answer. "I worked for the government." Right. Moving skids around for the taxpayer." He chuckled at his own joke and reached for the wine. "Hey, no shame in it. Somebody's got to do it." My son studied his plate. My daughter-in-law smiled, the way you smile at turbulence. We ate. Lyle talked. He talked about his condo projects in Vaughan and how the market was soft, but soft markets were where smart men made money. He talked about his cottage in Muskoka, the new dock, what the neighbor's place sold for. He talked about his golf handicap. Every time my son tried to say anything, Lyle talked over him or turned it back to himself, and my daughter-in-law hung on every word like it was church. Then he pointed his fork at Jonah. "So, big guy, what are you going to be when you grow up?" Jonah glanced at me first. Then, quietly, "Maybe drive the Zamboni." at the arena, or be a teacher like Ms. Okafor. You'd think the kid had said he wanted to rob banks. Lyle set his fork down. The Zamboni. He looked around the table like he was waiting for someone to share the joke. A teacher, that's the ceiling, is it? Working for the government, driving in circles. He looked at my son. You hear this? This is what I'm talking about. The boy's got no ambition because nobody around him has any. When I was his age, I knew I was going to be rich. I wasn't dreaming about a pension. Dad's right, sweetheart, my daughter-in-law said quickly, touching Jonah's arm. You should dream bigger, maybe business school one day, like Grandpa Lyle. I set my fork down. He's 7. He's got a lot of runway before anybody needs to worry about his ambition. Lyle looked at me the way you look at a chair that suddenly spoke. See, that right there? That's the attitude. That's how people stay small. He leaned back. No offense, Emmett, but my daughter married up. She came from my world. Your boy came from yours. I've been working on him for 6 years, trying to teach him how money actually moves in this country. And it's uphill because certain influences keep pulling the other way. The table went quiet. My son had a forkful of turkey frozen halfway to his mouth. Jonah looked from face to face, trying to figure out what had just happened. Certain influences, I said. I'm just being honest. You're a decent guy. Blue collar, salt of the earth, whatever you want to call it. Nothing wrong with that. But let's not pretend it's something to aim for. I'm trying to make sure my grandson grows up around the right examples. There's a thing that happens to me in moments like that. It took me 30 years to build, and it never really went away. My heart rate goes down instead of up. Sounds get very clear. My voice, when it comes out quieter than before. I see, I said. Glad you do. He turned to my daughter-in-law. Sweetheart, the turkey's perfect. The dinner rolled on. Lyle had 3 glasses of wine and got louder with each one. He told a story about squeezing a drywall contractor down to half price by threatening to bury him in lawyers, and my daughter-in-law laughed, and my son moved food around his plate, and Jonah kicked his feet under his chair and didn't eat much of anything. After dinner, Lyle wanted everybody in the living room. He had gifts in October. Early Christmas, he announced, because who knows where I'll be in December, maybe Palm Springs. For his daughter, diamond earrings in a little gray box. For my son, a corporate membership at his golf club. Time you started meeting the right people. For Jonah, an envelope. He made a speech about it, $5,000 into the boy's RCMP. For a real school, mind you. Not college. And I'll tell you what, bud, there's another 5 in it every year you spend on something useful instead of house league hockey. Jonah was 7. He didn't understand a word of it except that his hockey was the wrong answer again. He said thank you because his mother's eyes told him to. Lyle turned to me last, palms up, big grin. Emmett, I got you nothing. Didn't know you'd be here. A beat. Although, credit where it's due. You raised him. He tipped his glass at my son. And he turned out all right, all things considered. Landed himself a girl from a good family. Let's hope the boy takes after her side. And that, finally, was when my son opened his mouth. Okay, maybe we should. Maybe we should what? Wine had put an edge on Lyle's voice. I'm complimenting your father, Cole. I'm saying he did fine, given what he had to work with. I think my dad did more than fine, my son said, quietly. But he said it. Lyle laughed from his belly. Oh, come on. Look around you. This house, this street, this life. You think you got here on your old man's warehouse checks? You got here because my daughter saw potential in you and because I opened doors. Who introduced you to the partners at your firm? Who co-signed so you two could get into this market? In this country, son, it's not what you know. And your father never knew anybody. That co-signing business wasn't even true. My son and his wife scraped that down payment together over 6 years. And I know because I watched them do it, eating no-name groceries with 2 degrees between them. But my son didn't correct him. I watched my boy get smaller in his own living room, in front of his own kid, and something old and cold started moving around in my chest. That's when Jonah, who had drifted to the window, asked if he could go out and shoot on the net before it got dark. His mother said it was too late. He begged. Lyle waved a hand. Let him burn it off. God knows he's not going to sit still. And the kid was out the sliding door like a shot. Through the front window, I watched him drag the net back to the middle of the driveway and start snapping tennis balls at it. He's got a nice little wrister for 7. He missed one high. The ball skipped off the garage brick, bounced once, and pinged off the side mirror of the Range Rover. Didn't even leave a mark. I know because I checked later. A tennis ball, off a mirror housing, from a 7-year-old. Lyle was mid-sentence about pre-construction pricing, and he stopped like he'd been shot. Did that just hit my truck? It's a tennis ball, Dad, my daughter-in-law started. It's fine. But he was already up, already through the front door, and I was up too, because a lifetime of reading men like him told me exactly where this was going. By the time I got outside, he was standing over my grandson in the dusk, and my grandson had gone white, holding his stick with both hands like it might protect him. $140,000 vehicle. Do you understand me? Do you have any idea what anything costs? Of course you don't, because nobody in this house has ever taught you to respect anything. I'm sorry, Jonah said. His voice was shaking. I didn't mean. Sorry doesn't buff out. And then Lyle grabbed the stick out of my grandson's hands. The stick I bought him at Canadian Tire last Christmas, the one we taped together on my kitchen table, with him picking the color, black with one band of leaves blue, and he brought it down across his knee and snapped it in two, and threw the pieces across the lawn. Jonah burst into tears. Maybe now you'll. That's enough. I was already crossing the driveway. He turned on me and his face was purple to the collar. Oh, here we go. The warehouse philosopher's got opinions on discipline. You raised a pushover, Emmett, and now he's raising another one, and I am done watching it happen. Behind me, the front door had opened. My son and his wife on the step, frozen. Apologize to my grandson, I said. Excuse me? You broke his stick. You made him cry over a tennis ball. Apologize to him. He stepped in close. He had a couple inches on me and 30 pounds, and he was the kind of man who'd learned that stepping in close usually ended the conversation. Or what, old man? Eh? Or what? I didn't move. I've stood that close to men who had actual reasons to be feared. Men who buried people, not drywall contractors. And I'll tell you what 31 years taught me. The loud ones at family dinners are almost always the ones who've never once paid for anything they did. Jonah, I said, without taking my eyes off him. Go inside, bud. Jonah ran past us. His mother caught him and folded him up in her arms. You need to go home, Emmett, Lyle said. This is family business. This is my son's house. Is it? He laughed. Half of what's in it is because of me. I'll leave when I'm good and ready, and in the meantime, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop filling that boy's head with small-time garbage. You're going to stop showing up here reminding everyone where Cole came from. Somebody has to make a man out of that kid, and it's obviously not going to be his father, so it's going to be, get out of my house. It wasn't me who said it. My son had come down off the step. His hands were shaking. I could see it from 10 feet away, but his voice, for the first time in 6 years of watching this man feed on him, did not shake at all. Cole, his wife said. Cole, he's my father. He broke our son's stick over his knee and screamed at him in the driveway. He's been calling my dad a nobody at my table for 6 years, and I let him. And I'm ashamed of that, but I'm me. Dad, he looked at Lyle, not at me, and you're going to a hotel, and we'll talk when you've apologized to Jonah. For a second, nobody breathed. Then Lyle smiled, slow, and it was the ugliest thing I saw that whole night, uglier than the stick. There he is, he said softly. Finally grew a spine, and this is what you use it for. He looked at his daughter. Sweetheart, pack the boy a bag. You're both coming to the hotel with. No, she said. It came out of her cracked and quiet, and she was crying, but she had her arms around her son, and she did not move. No, Dad. Lyle looked around the driveway at all of us like a man checking a bill he was refusing to pay. Then he pointed at me. This is you. This is all you. He was breathing hard. You know what you are, Emmett. You're a nobody. A little man with a little pension who counted boxes for 40 years, and the only thing you ever built was a son soft enough for my daughter to have to run his life. Men like me build this country. Men like you take up space in it. I looked at him for a long moment. Everything in me was very quiet, very slow, very clear. Okay, I said. He blinked. Whatever he'd been braced for, it wasn't that. Okay. Okay, it's late. Everybody's tired. I turned to my son, Cole. Can I use your den for a minute before I head out? I have to make a call. My son looked at me, confused, wrung out, and nodded. I went inside, past my daughter-in-law and my grandson, down the hall to the little den with the IKEA desk where my son does his taxes, and I closed the door, and I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in 4 years. I knew it would still be good. Numbers like that stay good. He picked up on the second ring. Well, holy hell. Emmett Doyle, Aldo. House Toronto. Expensive. How's being retired? Complicated. I need a favor. Run a name for me. Lyle Vandermeer, 66. Condo developer, Oakville, projects up in Vaughan and a cottage in Muskoka. Numbered companies? I'd guess more than a few. I could hear his chair creak, then the keyboard. Aldo and I came up together. He never retired. Last I knew, he was a staff sergeant with the integrated money laundering team downtown. RCMP, OPP, the whole alphabet at one table. Any particular reason? He asked, typing. Call it a hunch. There was a pause, then a low whistle, the kind I'd heard him make maybe a dozen times in 30 years, and never once over nothing. Emmett, he said, your hunches were always a pain in my ass. Give me an hour. I hung up and sat in my son's den, listening to the murmur of the house through the door. Somewhere out front, an engine the size of a furnace started up and pulled away. I sat there and thought about how much of my life I had never told the people in this house. Here's the truth. The one thing Lyle Vandermeer got wrong about me, along with everything else. I never worked in a warehouse. For 31 years, I was a member of the RCMP. Most of that in federal policing, commercial crime, and then proceeds of crime, which is a polite way of saying I spent 3 decades following dirty money through this country. Grow-op cash through car washes in the 90s, casino chips in the 2000s, and the last stretch of my career, real estate. Because if you want to wash serious money in Canada, you don't buy gold bars, you buy pre-construction condos. I worked undercover stretches I still can't talk about. I sat across folding tables from men who moved more cash in a month than Lyle would see in his life. I testified for the Crown 22 times. I have a commendation in a drawer in my bedroom, under the socks, that I've never shown a living soul. My son knows none of it. When he was small, I told him I worked in logistics for public works. Out of the federal building in Hamilton. It explained the travel. It explained why I couldn't talk about my days. The paychecks came, the pension built, and the lie got easier every year, and I let it. Because the honest math was simple. The less my family was to anyone who wanted to hurt me. There was a stretch in the 90s, after a certain trial, when a certain organization would have dearly loved to know where my boy went to school. He never knew. That was the whole point. He grew up thinking his old man was a friendly, boring government guy with a bad back and early bedtimes. So when a man like Lyle looked at me and saw a nobody, I never corrected him. Being underestimated was a professional tool for 31 years. You'd be amazed what people say in front of the guy they've decided doesn't matter. Aldo called back at 9:45 while I was sitting in my truck in my own driveway in Stony Creek, because I hadn't managed to make myself go inside yet. Okay, he said, so, your hunch, tell me. Your guy's been on our board for the better part of 2 years. Fintrax flagged him 9 ways from Sunday. Structured deposits under 10 grand across 4 banks. Always a hair under the reporting line. He's been flipping pre-construction assignments in Vaughan, high volume, and the money coming in the front end traces back through 2 layers of numbered companies to people out of Montreal that you and I both don't remember. It's a laundromat. M. Textbook. Buy the paper with dirty money, assign it, out comes a nice clean check with HST on it. You have a case? We have most of a case. It's been crawling. He's careful, he's got good lawyers, and honestly, he's been the 4th priority on a board with 3 bigger names. A pause. Why, what's he to you? I told him. The dinner, the stick. My grandson's face in the dusk. Aldo was quiet for a bit. You know I can't jump a guy to the front of the line because he's a jackass to 7-year-olds. I'm not asking you to arrest him for that. I'm asking you to look at what's already in front of you and tell me whether it deserves to sit 4th on anybody's board. If he's clean, and I'll never say his name again. He's not clean. Then do your job faster. Aldo laughed, but it was the tired kind. I'll talk to the file coordinator Tuesday. Off the record, the production orders have been drafted since August. This might be the kick it needed. Then softer. Good to hear your voice, you stubborn old mule. Don't be a stranger. I sat in the truck a while longer after that. My house is a little brick wartime place, paid off, eavesdrews needing doing. I drive a 12-year-old F-150. My good coat is from Mark's. To a man like Lyle Vandermeer, I look exactly like what he called me. That's fine. I called my son before bed and told him one thing. Whatever happens the next little while, trust me and keep your phone on. It took 11 days, which in this business is the speed of light. My son called me on a Thursday morning, and his voice was strange. Dad, there's something going on with Lyle. Marissa's been on the phone with him all week. He's been weird since Thanksgiving. And this morning he called her in a panic and then hung up. And now there's, Dad, it's on the news. CP24. They're carrying boxes out of his sales office in Vaughan. Stay home today if you can, I said. I'm coming over. By the time I got to Burlington, it wasn't just Vaughan. They'd executed at his office, his house in Oakville, and this part I heard later from Aldo, the accountant's office he shared with 2 other developers. RCMP led, OPP alongside. Production orders on 5 banks. That evening the man himself was asked to attend the detachment with his lawyer for an interview, and being Lyle he refused, and being the RCMP, they came to him. My daughter-in-law drove down to Oakville and stood on her father's interlocked driveway and watched 2 plainclothes officers walk her dad out to a gray sedan. Not in cuffs. They were civilized about it, but not optional either. And here's the thing I'll carry a long time. She told me afterward that as they walked him past her, her father wasn't looking at the officers or at her. He was scanning the street, looking for me. He found me eventually. 3 days later, out on bail conditions, forbidden from contacting half his business associates, he showed up at my son's house while I happened to be there fixing the gate latch, and he stood at the end of the driveway, the same spot where he'd snapped a 7-year-old's hockey stick, and pointed at me over the hedge. You, he said. His voice had lost all its furniture. I don't know how, but this is you. I made a phone call, I said. You're nobody. You're a warehouse. Who are you? I'm exactly what I told you. I worked for the government. I picked up my screwdriver. House. My son was standing in the garage doorway, and I watched him hear that, and I knew the bill for 31 years had finally come due. That night, after Jonah was in bed, the 3 of us sat at the kitchen table and I told them, not everything. Some of it is sealed, some of it I wouldn't hand to anyone I love, but the shape of it. 31 years, the Mounties, the money files, why the travel, why the silences, why a kid in Hamilton grew up thinking his dad counted boxes. My son didn't say anything for a long time. Then, 31 years. His voice was flat in a way I'd never heard. Every career day. Every time I asked what you did and you gave me that line about skids and manifests, I used to defend you to guys like Lyle in my head, Dad. I used to think, he's more than you know, and I didn't even know I was protecting you, maybe. Probably. But you want to know the worst part? His eyes were wet. You spent my whole life telling me to be honest. Look a man in the eye, tell the truth, that's what you'd say. And it turns out it only ran one way. That one landed harder than anything Lyle ever said to me, because Lyle was wrong about everything and my son was right. You're right, I said. It only ran one way. The job gave me a reason, and after a while the reason became a habit, and I hid behind it long past the point where I needed to. I should have told you the day I retired. I'm sorry, Cole. Not sorry. With an explanation. Just sorry. He looked at me for a long moment. I don't know who you are, he said quietly. I mean, I do. But I have to start over a bit. You get that? I get it. My daughter-in-law hadn't said a word through any of it. She sat there with her tea going cold, and when she finally spoke, it wasn't to me and it wasn't to her husband. He paid for my braces with that money, she said, to the middle of the table. My degree. My wedding. She looked up at me, and I braced for it, because if she needed somebody to hate for this, I was the obvious candidate, and I'd have taken it. Is it true? Don't manage me. You've seen the kind of file they have. Is it true? I've seen 100 files like it, I said. I haven't seen his, but they don't come through your door like that on a hunch. They come through your door like that when they already know. She nodded slowly and cried without any noise at all, and my son put his hand over hers, and I let myself out and drove home on the QEW with the radio off. I'll tell you what she did, though, my daughter-in-law, over the weeks that followed, because I think it's the most important part of this whole story, and it's the part I least expected. She didn't circle the wagons. She didn't move into the guest room of her father's defense. She hired her own lawyer, hers, not his, sat down with the investigators when they asked, and answered every question about every check her father had ever written her, including the down payment help, which it turned out had come from an account that was now very interesting to the Crown. She put the diamond earrings from Thanksgiving in a Ziploc bag and handed them over in case they mattered. Her father called her from his lawyer's office and told her she was betraying her family, and she told me this herself, months later at my kitchen table, over the same tape-covered table where the stick had been built, she said, No, Dad. I'm protecting mine. You taught me the difference tonight. It cost her. It cost them both. There were weeks that winter when the house in Burlington was very quiet, when she could barely look at my son because he'd been in the driveway when it started, and could barely look at me at all. Marriages take on water in weather like that. But they bailed, the two of them, together, and the boat did not go down. I want that said plainly, because I've heard enough stories where the kid ends up as wreckage. Jonah kept his mother and his father under one roof through all of it. Whatever else I set in motion that Thanksgiving, I'll take that. The case took 14 months to get to trial. It's Canada. Nothing legal happens fast. The Crown proceeded on laundering the proceeds of crime and fraud, and the disclosure Aldo told me over coffee at a Tim Hortons on Barton Street ran to something like 90,000 pages, 22 months of structured deposits, 41 assignment flips, 2 numbered companies in his golf body's name, and a cooperating witness, a mortgage broker who'd been sweating in the middle of it and jumped at the first hand extended to him. The jury was out a day and a half, guilty across the sheet. I went to the sentencing at the Superior Court in Milton. I hadn't gone to a single day of the trial, didn't trust myself to sit still through the defense's version of him, but the sentencing I needed to see. Aldo met me on the courthouse steps. "You sure, Em?" I was sure. He'd aged 10 years in 14 months. His suit still cost more than my truck, but it hung on him now, and the tan was gone. And when they brought him in, he scanned the gallery the way he'd scanned the street that day, and he found me, and I watched him decide not to react, which for Lyle Vandermeer was the closest thing to growth I ever saw. The judge asked if anyone wished to address the court before sentencing. My son stood up. I didn't know he was going to. His hands were shaking. I could see it from 3 rows back, and his voice was steady as a level. "Your Honor, my name is Cole Doyle. Mr. Vandermeer is my father-in-law." He looked at the man once, then back at the bench. "I'm not here to excuse anything, but my wife asked me to say something true, so here it is. When I married into his family, he was generous to me. He made calls for me. He told people he was proud of me, and for a long time I believed the generosity was who he was and the rest was rough edges. I got it backwards. The rest was who he was and the generosity was the paint. I know that now, but the paint was real paint. And my wife loved her father, and our son loved his grandfather, and the court should know that what he burned down wasn't only money. That's all." He sat down. My daughter-in-law took his hand. "I have never been prouder of anyone in my life." Then I stood up. Heads turned. His lawyer leaned over to whisper something. "Your Honor, my name is Emmett Doyle. I'm Cole's father. I served 31 years with the RCMP, most of it in proceeds of crime work, and I want to say one thing for the record, because in 31 years I never got to say it out loud in one of these rooms. The money Mr. Vandermeer washed wasn't dirty in some abstract way. I spent my career meeting the people who make money like that, and the people they make it from. It comes out of neighborhoods. It comes out of people's kids. Every clean check he cut had somebody's worst day on the other end of it, and he never had to look at a single one of them, because men like him never do. And I'd ask the court to remember one more thing. In my career, I watched a lot of men in good suits walk out of rooms like this with a fine and a story for the club. The people I served with stopped believing the system reaches the top floor a long time ago. Here's a chance to prove them wrong." I sat down. The room was very quiet. Lyle was staring at me, and I honestly couldn't tell you whether it was hatred or fear, and I've had a lot of practice telling those apart. The judge gave him 9 years. Federal time, a penitentiary, not some club. And with it, the forfeiture order. This is the part the papers ran with. The Muskoka cottage, the Range Rover, 3 unsold units in Vaughan, and the contents of accounts at 4 banks, gone, seized as proceeds, a chunk of it flowing back through the courts toward restitution. His lawyer said something about appeal. His lawyers are still saying it. Outside on the steps, my son found me. October again, almost exactly 2 years to the day. Leaves coming down over the parking lot. "Was it worth it?" he asked me. Not angry. Really asking. I gave him the honest answer, because we're an honest family now, both directions. I don't know. He did it to himself. I never framed a guiltless man in my life, and I didn't start with him. All I did was tell people who were already looking to look faster. But Marissa lost her father. You two lost 2 years of peace. Jonah's had to learn things at 8 that I'd have paid to keep from him at 40. That's real, and some of it's on me, and I'd make the same call again tomorrow. All of that's true at once. That's the best I've got. My son nodded slowly. Then he said, "Thank you." And when I looked surprised, "For what you said in there, about the people on the other end of the checks, I've been feeling guilty for a year, like maybe we ruined a basically decent guy over some paperwork. I needed to hear what the paperwork was. Yours was better," I said. "Yours was harder to say. I learned it off a guy," he said. "He kept a few things from me. He's working on it." We went for wings after, the two of us, and watched the first period of the Leafs game at a place off Guelph Line. And for the first time in 2 years, the table between us felt like a table and not a wall. That was a while ago now. Here's where everything landed. Lyle is in a medium security institution in Eastern Ontario. With the parole system being what it is, he'll be out in a few years, older and a great deal poorer. My daughter-in-law writes him a letter every couple of months. She doesn't visit yet. She says maybe someday, and I think she means it, and I think that's hers to carry however she wants. She and my son are solid, better than solid. There's a plainness between them now, a no more performing, that I don't think was there even at the wedding. Last spring she started calling me Dad. First time she did it, in my kitchen, holding a paint roller. They were helping me finally do the eavesdrews and the trim. She went red and pretended it hadn't happened, and I pretended right along with her. And it's been Dad ever since. Jonah is 9. He plays select now. Still small, quick as a rumor. There's a new stick in my garage that we taped together at the same table, black with one band of blue. And there's a busted one hanging on the wall above my workbench. Both pieces, because I asked to keep it and nobody asked why. He knows the shape of what happened. His parents told him the truth in kid-sized pieces. Grandpa Lyle broke rules about money, big rules. And when you break rules, there are consequences. No matter how big your truck is. Once, driving him home from practice, he asked me straight out, "Grandpa, were you like a spy?" Not a spy. More like a guy who followed money that was trying to hide. He chewed on that. Grandpa Lyle's money was hiding. It was, and you found it. Other people found it. I just told them to hurry up. He looked out the window at the snow for a while. Then, "He shouldn't have broken my stick." "No, Bud," I said. "He really shouldn't have." Last month, at one of his games in Ancaster, some parent 2 rows down started screaming at the ref. Really screaming, veins out screaming, over a house league offside. And I felt Jonah's whole bench go quiet the way kids do. After, in the lobby, holding his gear bag bigger than he was, Jonah watched that man still chirping at the ref through the glass, and he said, to nobody in particular, "That guy thinks being loud makes him right." My son looked at me over the boy's head. Neither of us said a word. Didn't have to. I think about that Thanksgiving more than I'd like. The net on its side, the tennis ball against my boot, the sound a hockey stick makes when a grown man breaks it over his knee to frighten a child, which is a sound I'd trade a lot to unhear. And I think about the moment I said, "Okay," and walked inside to the den, and how a man who'd spent an entire evening telling me exactly what I was never once wondered what I might be. He told me men like him build this country, and men like me take up space in it. Well, I spent 31 years finding out what some men actually build this country out of, and where the money underneath the granite countertops really comes from, and I did it quietly, with no watch to show for it, going home to a little brick house in Stony Creek that I wouldn't trade for his cottage, his club, or his cell. You can call me a paper pusher, a box counter, a little man with a little pension. Go right ahead. I learned a long time ago that being underestimated isn't an insult, it's a gift, because people show you exactly who they are the minute they decide you can't do anything about it. Lyle Vandermeer looked at a quiet old man in a Mark's jacket and decided I was nobody, and then he showed me everything. And when he did, I did what I'd done my whole working life. I stayed calm. I made a call. I let the system do the rest. He never saw it coming. The best ones never do.